Foveated streaming has become one of VR's biggest buzzwords after Valve announced that the Steam frame will feature it. A lot of people think it's the same thing as foveated rendering, and even more people think you need eye tracking to use either of those features. Well, they aren't. You don't. And it's time we stop saying the Steam frame has foveated rendering built in. They are fairly similar concepts, so I can understand why people mix them up. Both do something to make one part of your view in a headset look better than all the other parts. The simplest form of foveated rendering or streaming is called fixed. A static zone in the view of your headset is treated better than all the other parts of it. This zone does not move around with your eyes. When it's attached to your eye tracking, it actually gets a new name: dynamic foveated rendering or streaming. You still have a zone that's treated better than everything outside of it, except this time that zone follows your eyes around. Pretty simple distinction, but a lot of people don't know that the fixed versions exist. Now it's time to look at what actually makes foveated rendering and streaming different. We'll start with foveated streaming since that's the one people seem to get a little bit more confused about. You may also hear it called foveated encoding instead sometimes. This is only applicable to wireless or standalone headsets since it affects how the video stream is streamed to the headset. You can't just send raw video feeds over Wi-Fi or USB. They're too big, so they gotta get compressed first. When you're streaming, you have two different parameters called the bitrate and the encoding resolution. There are, of course, other parameters involved, but they aren't as important for this concept. The higher the encoding resolution, the better things will look in the headset, and the higher the bitrate, the less compressed the image gets. Without foveated encoding, these parameters are uniform across the entire image. This isn't super efficient to do since there isn't a headset out there with perfect edge-to-edge clarity, meaning no matter what you do, the image is not going to look equally as good across your entire vision. Most headsets also have parts of their video feeds that aren't even visible to the person using the headset. What foveated streaming does is sends a video feed to your headset with that data distributed unevenly. This can be done by varying the bitrate between the two, varying the encoding resolution between the two, or by a combination of both. Dynamic foveated streaming makes that better area follow your eyes around. This is great because sometimes you do want to look places other than right in the middle of your screen. It also lets you get a lot more aggressive with the size of the better area. You can make it smaller because you're always looking at it. This feature isn't exclusive to the Steam frame. If you have an eye-tracked headset, you can probably use it with Steam Link or Virtual Desktop right now. Additionally, fixed foveated encoding is used for pretty much every non-eye-tracked headset, whether you know it or not. This is most noticeable in Steam Link since you're able to control the size of it. It's important to note that foveated streaming doesn't affect how your games get rendered at all. This means you aren't really going to see any increases in FPS. You can see better wireless performance though. Foveated streaming makes encoding and decoding the video feed easier, which reduces latency and also helps with stuttering. You'll also see less compression artifacts since you're using the same bitrate, just with more of it concentrated in important areas. If you want to get better performance in your games, you're gonna need to look towards foveated rendering instead. There's actually two commonly used types of it, and one of them brings a lot more performance gains than the other. The first type is called variable rate shading, and it doesn't render things at different resolutions like most people think foveated rendering has to. Normally in a scene, each pixel is shaded individually, but with variable rate shading, blocks of 4 or even 16 pixels all share the exact same shading. This doesn't actually change the resolution of whatever's on your screen, it's just affecting how it's shaded. The type of foveated rendering most people think all foveated rendering is called quad views. Normally a game renders one view per eye, but with quad views it renders two. One of these views covers the entire field of view of a headset and is a lower resolution. The other view covers a much lower FOV, but is rendered at a higher resolution. Quad views is where you can see performance gains of around 50 to 100%. Variable rate shading doesn't do anything crazy like that, but in a good scenario, you can see performance gains of about 20%. Unfortunately, quad views is a much less commonly implemented method. Of course, both of these methods can also be fixed or dynamic. Similarly to foveated encoding, with dynamic you can make the better area a lot smaller since it's always following your eyes. This can actually lead to more performance gains on top of what you would get with fixed. One last difference between foveated streaming and rendering is where you can use them. Foveated streaming works literally everywhere, whether you're in a game or just sitting around in the Steam VR void. Foveated rendering does not work everywhere and requires games to implement it. There are some third-party tools that can inject it into games that don't support it natively. Support for this can be really spotty, and the way it works is actually similar to how cheats work, so if a game has anti-cheat, you can't use it. The dynamic versions of these concepts are definitely a lot more interesting to see get implemented. Unfortunately for now, dynamic foveated streaming is the more common one. Dynamic foveated rendering should be more supported now that we're seeing more and more headsets get eye tracking, and that means more and more developers will probably start hooking into it to use. Maybe. I think it needs to come to a Quest first. I'd like to take a second to shout out my channel member. If you want to support the channel past just subscribing, becoming a member is a great way. I'm not too sure my perks are accurate. Like, apparently I offer a special Discord role, but I don't see that in my server. I mean, I can make one. Regardless, you'll be able to see videos a bit earlier than everyone else, and you'll also be able to contribute to my crippling VR hardware addiction.